Hello, hello. Welcome, y'all.
Hey everyone.
We're gonna give it about 30 seconds for some folks to join, and then we'll jump into our welcome and check-in because we have a awesome packed agenda. So want to make sure we have time for everything.
Laura, this is the Zoom I was in earlier for a few minutes, just being like, do.
Just a little bit early. That's okay.
Meredith, I don't know if you were in the room yet, but I have 3 council meetings today back to back. So I just clicked the wrong one this morning and was just teetering around. And finally I was like, oh, I'm in the wrong one. Man, I'm going to probably do this all day, but I got it. I got it. This one.
Yeah, that happens. I think to anyone who does Zoom meetings these days, that just happens. Donnie, it's awesome to see you back. I think last month there were technical issues, so if I'm remembering that right, it's been a month.
Yeah, it has. Thank you. It's great to be back.
Yeah, so glad you could rejoin us. Shelley, welcome. It sounds like, do I have an echo?
Thank you.
Can
You do it.
Did. I think it went away.
Okay, cross your fingers. Welcome, Bob. It's so nice to see you. Wilma and Shelley. Mrs. Kanitha is here. Great to see you. Hi, Dee. Wendy's about to join us, and we are going to get things rolling and start with a check-in just to say hello to one another and greet each other. It's going to be kind of a brief check-in today because we're really excited to have the Senior Policy Manager, Laura Brennan from the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council to lead Civic Engagement 101 training today. So we will check in and then we'll hand it over to her. So our check-in today is about civic engagement, and Laura will talk more about this, but just very generally speaking, when we talk about civic engagement, what I think about is like taking part in your community and working together to make it a better place. So our check-in question is, what one word describes how you're feeling about civic engagement now? And you can put that word in the chat. You can come off mute and share that word. But we're going to take about 5 minutes to share people's responses to that question, and then we'll turn it over to Laura. I see Mrs. Kanitha's comment in the chat, underground railroad literally. And Marion, welcome. It's so awesome to have you here. Welcome back. And I see your question. Thanks so much for asking. Can you help explain what is civic engagement? It's a really good question. And Laura is going to talk more about this in a little bit. The way that I think about it is like taking part in your community, participating in your community in some way in an effort to try and make it a better place. So I know last time in our meeting last month, we were talking about, in so many ways, our world and our communities are going through really difficult, heavy times. And we were talking about what we were doing to take care of ourselves and work together. And so this question just asks you to share one word about how you're feeling about taking part in your community and working to make it a better place. Does anyone want to come off mute and share their word? Or again, Shelley, go ahead.
I feel resilience because we're all strong and we're trying to. I'm echoing too, but just the way we come together and make everything better. At least we're trying.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what we can do is just keep trying one day at a time, one step at a time. Totally. And Marion, I see your comment in the chat, frustration. Yes.
Kind
Anyone
of to echo
else?
Marion, I was going to say disenfranchised.
Yeah, disenfranchised. Thank you, Mira.
I would say apprehensive.
Apprehensive. Thanks, Bob. How are others feeling?
I would say encouraged, only because I feel like we're in a time right now where it's not just affecting the homeless community, it's affecting society in all different parts. So I feel like people are starting to feel that frustration, and it's encouraging people to band together more in areas where they normally wouldn't have.
Yeah. Sending you so much appreciation. You lift us up so often in this meeting, Wilma, and your glasses are amazing. Thank you so much. Donnie, I see your hand. Take it away.
It's important, but it's also very because when I reaching out, it helps me, if that makes any sense.
He's breaking up.
I'm breaking up. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? I'll just put it in the chat.
Thanks so much, Donnie. So often we have to work around technological challenges. So glad you're here, and thanks for sharing in the chat. Anyone else want to share your one word that describes how you're feeling about like being a part of your community, participating in your community in an effort to make it a better place?
I'll jump in. This is Deidre. I'm going to say hopeful. You guys. Today they're having a community meeting downtown, and I'm hoping I could be there for a $14 million project for the mental health, homeless, with mental health issues, of opening a facility in Emancipation Park. Thank you. I know that was a lot of words, but I am hopeful for change.
Amazing. Thank you, Dee. We can use all the hope we can get, I think. Really appreciate it. Anyone else want to share? Oh, Donnie put in inspiring because not only does it help the community, but I like the way I feel as well. Thank you, Donnie. Dee's also rocking some awesome glasses. I'm gonna have to get me a pair for our next meeting.
Hi, everybody. I came in late. Where are we?
We're just checking in, Kendall. If you want to, we have about 30 more seconds for check-in, and then we're gonna pass it off to Laura. But if you or anyone else wants to share one word that describes how you're feeling about civic engagement, meaning how you're feeling about participating in your community in an effort to make it a better place.
Two words, learning a lot.
Thanks, That's 3 words. Thanks, Kendall. Well, appreciate each and every one of you in this NCAB community, the National Consumer Advisory Board. Welcome again to our October meeting, and super excited to introduce Laura Brennan. She's the Senior Policy Manager at the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council. And Laura, I'll turn it over to you. I don't know if you want to say anything else about yourself. Thank you so much for being here and coming to talk with us about civic engagement.
Thanks, Meredith. And hey, y'all, it's so good to be here. It's so good. I'm really excited about this conversation. And I think that was such a great opening question, too. Like, I heard a lot of mixed feelings around civic engagement, which I think are all totally valid in the time that we're living in. And I think I shuffle through those feelings every single day, like a mix of frustration, moments where I feel really inspired, especially when I'm like talking with other folks who are engaging in advocacy or are really involved in their communities. Like, that can really fill my cup and make me feel inspired. But that frustration part is also really, really real. And so I just appreciate all of the like feelings that we have at this moment, because it's tough times right now. It's tough, it's overwhelming, and we're all trying our best. And I just really appreciate that. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with y'all. I put together a PowerPoint, so I'm going to share my screen in a second, but it is meant to be interactive. So I have some parts where there's questions. I have a short video. Like feel free to jump in if you have questions or comments throughout the presentation. Like this should be just like civic engagement, this should be community driven. And so I want to be engaging with you all. And so please feel free to just jump off mute, jump in the chat. I'll try to monitor. I'm not the best when I screen share. So Meredith, I might tag you with like if you see something. Perfect. All right, I am going to share my screen. Oops, put this in the big mode. Can you all see that? Yes, perfect. All right. So we'll just start out with kind of what Meredith was just talking about of like, what is civic engagement? What does it even mean? And what are we talking about when we discuss civic engagement? So this is the actual definition here, and I'm going to read it and then I'm going to break it apart a little bit. So civic engagement is individual and collective actions designed to identify and address issues of public concern to improve a community. So that can feel kind of vague, but I want to like break down that first part. So it says individual and collective actions. And so I think that part, when we think about civic engagement, is really important, is that we have the ability to create an influence and to create change either as ourselves, as one person, or as a group. And that can be any sort of collective action. That can be through NCAB, that can be with your local community, that can be if you're part of your school board. That collective action can look really different. And I think the important part of civic engagement is like, I think of it like a puzzle. We're all working on different pieces, and even our individual actions build into that collective action. So if you think about the No Kings protest that happened this past weekend, like one of the largest in US history, I'm sure some of y'all went out into your communities, but just that ability for all of us to get together and to share feelings and to take action and to stand together, even that collective action happened because of all of our individual choices that day to get out, to show up, to make a sign, to drive to where the protest was, right? And so all of that is civic engagement. But what we're doing is it's all rooted in an issue or concern from the community. And so civic engagement, as well as policy and government, are all driven by the issues that we see in our community, by the issues that we identify, by the experiences that we've had. And so it should all be really community driven, and I'll get to that in a little bit as well. But so it's into these individual and collective actions that are coming from the issues that we are seeing every day as members of society. And we're raising those issues up, and that can look a lot of different ways. And so I have some examples here we'll talk through, but we can raise those concerns in various ways to try to better our community. And that's ultimately the goal. Like, we all want to live in better communities, and we all have a vision for that. And so our civic engagement is us just pushing for what we believe is the best thing for our community. And so some examples, voting and contacting elected officials. And so voting is one of those like most basic forms of civil engagement. When you think about like what you learned as a kid, it's like, you know, you talked about turning 18 and registering to vote and the opportunity to vote. And so voting is a really great way to engage. You know, we choose our elected officials, and sometimes that can be frustrating, and we don't always agree with ultimately who is elected, but our vote is our way to speak up and engage. We vote on ballot initiatives, right? So you might see something come up and there might be a decision that your local level, your local government is trying to make, and you can vote yes or no on something. And so that's another good way for us to engage in our community and the things that are going on. On that same vein, because we're voting for our elected officials, and I'm sure you've heard this, that your elected officials work for you, another great way is to contact them, call them, write them, have meetings with them, engage with your elected officials, because they need to be hearing from us, because we're that collective and we're influencing the decisions that they are making. And so getting in contact with your elected officials, whatever way that might be, is really impactful. Some other ways that you can get engaged is to speak at city council meetings. And so this could be to your elected official, it could be to a broader like council of officials, some, who represent your city or your town. Sharing your stories either with elected officials. We talk about sharing stories with media for like an op-ed, if that's something that you would be comfortable with. Sharing your story on social media, whether if that's something that you engage in, if you're really engaged on Facebook or Instagram, like sharing your story. And we'll talk about like how sharing your story can be a good form of civic engagement and what that'll look like. And then lastly, it's joining advisory boards and community coalitions. Again, coming back to that collective action. How do you engage with the members of your community? Where do you share ideas and come together to talk about this is to kind of like do that back and forth and debate, like, here's an idea I have to make things better. And someone can say, oh, that sounds great. Here's what you're not considering about that idea. And so joining those groups to have those discussions and then to collectively join together and try to create change. Any questions about that before I move on? Okay. So why are we doing this? So I just said a lot of different things, ways we can engage, why it's important, but like ultimately, why are we doing this? Civic engagement is so incredibly important, and I hear and feel those same feelings of frustration and anger, sometimes isolation in this, but civic engagement is really important. It's so important, even in moments like right now, where it feels almost fruitless at times. It is so incredibly important because the things that are happening, they affect our lives. They're issues that impact us. And so that's why we need to engage. When we are engaged, whether that's voting, showing up to town hall meetings, sharing our story, we help the government run more effectively and innovatively because they're hearing from the folks on the ground. They can understand the impacts of the decisions that are being made, and we can provide feedback, and we create that feedback loop. But that loop doesn't occur unless we're speaking up and sharing how we're being impacted. In that same vein, it helps create better and more sustainable policies, right? Because a lot of time, the elected officials, the folks who are making the rules, they don't understand. They haven't lived through the same things that we have all lived through. They haven't experienced, they may have experience with a family member who's an immigrant, but they might not have experience with homelessness. And so they can't be an expert on all these different things. And what they need to rely on is us as individuals to provide feedback to them and tell them what is going on to help them create policies that reflect the people. It also helps create more trust in government, which I know sounds ironic right now because doesn't feel like there's a lot of trust in government, and I share that feeling. But the more engagement we have and the stronger the relationships we build, and the better that trust can be. And so if you get really engaged with your city council, they start to come to you, you can go to them with problems. And again, we get better solutions and create more change. And then that leads into just like community-wide solutions, community-driven solutions. We don't want folks making decisions without us, especially when those are policies that are going to impact us, right? And so we as a community want to be there, we want to be engaging, and we want to be leading those conversations. And that only occurs if we're engaging. Any questions there? Okay. Okay, so now we're going to do a little like refresher, what I say, like a little test of if you can remember your different levels of government and what they do. This is hard, I think. Like if you're not like steeped in this all the time, this can be hard. And so my question right now, and you can feel free to come off mute or drop things in the chat, is I want to know, like, who are the people at the federal level? Who are our elected officials at the federal level?
Governor,
The governor is state.
The House and
Senators?
Senate.
House and Senate, I heard. That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Congress.
Are you're talking national or and national and local, or just
Nope. Right
overall?
now, yeah, good question, Kendall. Right now we're talking about federal. And then
Federal,
I'm gonna
okay.
do a state slide and then I'll do a local slide. So think
Okay.
right now, who are federal? Who are the folks in DC making the decisions? So I heard Congress, the House and Senate. Who else?
House, Senate.
Like you talking about like the FBI and stuff like that?
Did you say the FDA? Is that what you said?
No,
Are you talking about?
this is Richard. She's speaking of the federal or the branches. So you have the executive branch, which is the president, vice president,
Executive,
and
legislative,
then the
judicial.
legislative branch, and then you have the judicial.
Right.
So that's the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
It's the
thank you.
judicial. And then you have the executive branch, which is the president, vice president, and then you have the Senate and the House.
Mhm.
The House of Representatives and Senate.
Great job, y'all. Y'all did great. Yeah, so I listed just some of them
I
out.
knew
So
it.
y'all got president, obviously there's the vice president, Congress. We have also the parts of the executive branch. So we have like the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary of the Housing and Urban Development, Secretary of Agriculture, so all those departments as well. And then we have the judicial system. Do you have any, well, my first question is, do y'all know how many members are in the Senate and how many members are in the House? It's like pop quiz, think back to like 6th grade. I feel like it can be hard to remember, but do we have any sense of what those numbers are? Yeah, so how many senators in each state or how many are total at the federal level?
There's 2 per state, correct?
Correct, Mary. Yeah, 2 per state. So we have 100 senators serving in Congress. What about the House of Representatives?
I want to say like 265, but I can't. That sounds like a lot.
More. It
Two
sounds like a lot.
more?
It's even more. Yep, it's higher than that. Any other guesses?
It's 435.
Correct. Yep, there's 435 members serving in the House. And so that number comes based on population. And so each state has a different number of representatives serving in the House. But so you got 100 people in the Senate and you have 435 in the House, and that makes up Congress. And so those are the folks like the Capitol building making laws, and we'll get into that. Do we know what kind of issues they cover at the federal level? Like what policy or law areas do they cover at the federal level? What have you heard about so far? Like what's going on right now?
Well, they usually cover education, healthcare, housing.
The
Yeah,
medicine
they're-
part, is that the CDA or something like that?
Yeah, y'all are doing great. So I just listed a few of them out. So like budget, I'm sure we're talking a lot about the budget. The government is currently shut down because they can't agree on spending levels. So they handle big federal budget. They manage housing funding policies, healthcare funding, Medicaid, which we talked a lot about this year, immigration, I saw in the chat, food stamps or like food assistance. All of that happens at the federal level. So that's our federal government and the stuff that they're who they are and the issues they're handling. We're gonna do the same thing for the state level. Do we have a sense of who those folks are?
At the governor, the mayor.
State rep.
So mayor will be local, but you have governor,
Oh.
you have state reps. Yep.
Lieutenant governor?
Lieutenant governor. Yep.
There's still a House and a Senate at the state level for every state.
Yep. Very good.
Attorney General.
Yep. Attorney general, which we also have a federal, like national level attorney general, but states all have attorney generals. Yeah, y'all got most of them. And then again, I just covered some of the agencies that fall into the executive branch of the state government.
A Medicaid director? Oh.
Yeah, a lot of states have Medicaid directors. It might have a different title. So this could all vary a little bit. There's some slight
okay.
state variance, but you all should have like a public health official, someone who handles social services, someone who handles housing. Like these are the types of positions that are usually at the state level of government. And Mira, you did say like every state has a like House and Senate, which is definitely true. Sometimes the House is called like a General Assembly, so the wording might be different, but it is
Right.
essentially the House. So it's that same split of like House and a Senate, and they all have different numbers. And so I can't tell you what they all are, but all of our states do have something just like that. And most of the time, our state government, like our state House and Senate, is in session. Typically, it changes for every state, but typically it is January to June. There is a state legislative session. Some states are much shorter. I think New Mexico is only 60 days. So they're in session for 60 days a year and they try to just get everything done. Some run all year long, but typically it runs January to June. And that's when they're like at the state capitol working on legislation, having hearings. Like that's their busy time of year, focusing on the budget, all that, the state budget, all that stuff. So what kind of issues does the state cover?
They tend to cover things that are particular to that state. Just going back a step, Texas is unusual because they only meet every other year, and for their House of Representatives and the Senate. So anything that comes from the federal level into the states, then states make decisions on how those are supposed to be either one appropriated if it's funding or how they're going to amend what they don't like in certain states out of whatever the feds hand out.
Very good summary. I appreciate that very much. That's probably better than I could have explained it. I listed some of those things that Richard was talking about of the stuff that they may amend or they might cover. So like Medicaid, the federal government made a bunch of decisions, but the state government has a lot of say within those larger decisions. Same with housing. But the state does do things like minimum wage laws, voter ID laws, gun laws, criminal justice laws. Again, the federal government can take up some of these things, but we often see that kind of legislation at the state level.
Well, Laura, I was going to
Okay.
ask you because to Richard, what Richard just said, because Oregon is the same way. So our long session is every other year, and then on those off years we have a short session that's February to March. I think. Is that just in random states? I wasn't sure how much that happens nationally, or is it just because we're weird?
Yeah, I don't know how many states have that. It's not like Oregon's not the only state. I don't know how many do off the top of my head. But there are some that are a little funky. They can also call special sessions. So if they are supposed to be in from
Yeah.
like January to June, they can call a special session later in the year and they can reconvene to cover like emergency issues.
Right.
All right, so what at the local level?
City council,
Yep,
Mayor.
yep.
county commission.
Y'all are doing so good. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much got them. Mayor, city council, any of your like your local police chief, local fire, and all those folks. So y'all did good. What kind of issues do they typically manage?
I don't know if you want to ask us that question, Laura, because I think a lot of us don't feel like our local government is managing anything. Well, they're supposed to
That's
be
a
managing
fair
what's
feeling. That's a great way to put that. What are they supposed to be managing?
So municipalities or cities are supposed to be managing whatever comes from the state level and how it affects their general area. Most of them accept what comes from the state government, and then they appropriate either those funds from the state into their municipalities, school systems, because state figures out what the budgets are going to be for schools, fire, first responders, that type of thing. And then they just go from there, whatever best suits the city and the municipality on how they want to run their city.
Perfect answer. Yeah, and so along those lines, think things like encampments, zoning issues. Yep, I see Wilma in the chat said zoning and planning school board, police protocol, shelter policies, eviction laws. And so I know a lot of time we focus on the federal side of things because it's big picture, but our local governments have a lot of say, like Mira said, they're not always doing as much or anything if we would like them to be doing, but they do have a lot of sway over kind of day-to-day life or things that really directly impact us. So those were all the people and issues. I really appreciate all playing along. I think it's helpful for us when we're thinking about different policy issues. It's important to know, like, who are we going to? Where does that issue fall, to make sure we're talking to the right people? Because when we are engaging, we need to be engaging with the right people, or we're just kind of exerting energy that won't get us the solutions that we want. So with that, I have one last game where there are 5 different kind of like policy or issue areas, and I just want folks to say if it's a local issue, a state issue, or a federal issue. So the first one is, who manages adding housing supports to Medicaid? Is that the local government, state government, or the federal government?
Federal.
Federal. Is that consensus on federal?
Yeah.
That is actually state. So your states handle that. It has to get
Really?
approved. Yeah, it has to get approved by the federal government, but your state submits a waiver to add.
Oh, for housing specific.
Yeah. Yeah. So good guess on federal, because they do ultimately have to approve, but it comes from the state. What about housing vouchers? Things like Section 8.
State.
They hear state? Richard, I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
That comes from the federal government.
Federal? Other thoughts?
Because it isn't it appropriated through HUD?
Correct. Yeah, so it is appropriated through HUD, and kind of as Richard was alluding to before, they have the money and they send it out to states, and then states can kind of manage that money, but it all comes from the federal government.
And
What
where
about
does the
zoning?
federal government get the money?
Taxpayers.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yes,
Yep.
it is our money. It is all taxpayer money. Yep. Great question. What about zoning for shelter locations?
Local.
That's municipalities. So the cities themselves, wherever the funding is going into, because they have to determine space and where zones are and stuff like that in order to put up shelters.
Good answer. Mira, I heard you say local as well. Y'all are right. Exactly as Richard explained it. What about policy around encampments?
Local.
See Richard nodding his head. Anyone else? Y'all got it. And then the last one, what about Medicaid eligibility requirements?
Federal.
State.
Federal. State.
Federal.
Wait, and do
Federal.
you mind if we go back here, Laura? Because I don't mind being wrong, but in terms of the first one, I swear that's what part of what they're arguing about right now, because Medicaid is federally funded. I thought that the whole housing thing, I know that it's like statutorily managed after the fact, but I thought the trickle down came from, I thought it started federally and then trickled down in terms of localized decision.
No, that's where states like, for example, like Texas can say, no, we're not going to accept the Medicaid expansion. So states have the reason to opt out of using federal funding for certain things that they don't want. So I can only speak about Texas because they're very big on not accepting the Medicaid expansion. But the Medicaid eligibility requirements is determined by the federal government, because that's why they're kicking people out by saying, you know, people that are not citizens of the United States have been using Medicaid. So they're changing the requirements, even though the requirements haven't been broken.
Right. And Wilma said it well too in the chat. Yeah. Funded. Okay. Because I just saw Medicaid and I was like, well, it has to be federal. But I just wanted to clarify my own brain. So thank you.
No, that's a great question. Is that, yeah, the Medicaid funding it comes from the federal government. So that's a good question. And Meredith, I saw your hand.
I didn't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about like the interaction between state and local governments or federal and state governments. Just when I think about like policies around encampments, you know, you have local down there, which makes total sense. And Texas is a state that has passed a statewide camping ban. So, like the city of Austin used to have different, much more humane, people-friendly policies around encampments. But then the state of Texas passed a, statewide law that basically outlawed, criminalized homelessness. And so that has impacted how, like, our city functions and its relationship with encampments. So I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up that, like there's some interaction between the two.
Yeah, no, that's a great flag. And I think is like part of the complexity of our government is that, right, the federal government makes laws for all of the states. The states have to abide by, and then within the states, the state government makes laws that all of the little localities and cities have to abide by. And so it's this like very tiered system. And so even though states and cities have authority to make laws, they can't make laws that would contradict what I would call their like larger power. So locality can't make a law that would contradict the state, but the state can't make something that would contradict or go against the federal government. And so it all kind of like tiers down, which in states like Texas, which is also where I live, if folks don't know, I live in Austin as well, is really hard for like blue cities and red states, or like, imagine red cities and blue states as well, because those state government or those local governments want to pass something different than the state, but they have to abide by what the state is saying. And so, yeah, it can create a lot of issues and makes it hard. And I think a lot of times local governments try to find creative ways to manage and deal with it. But at the end of the day, they do have to abide by the state laws.
Well, and that's what I thought was interesting what you said earlier, Laura, because ironically, I was in a public policy training with my board yesterday, but it was about local public policy. So it's interesting that like today we're talking about like from the top down, and yesterday it was like from the bottom up. Maybe that's why my brain's being weird. But they were talking about how, and you had mentioned how, getting in touch with your local officials is important because they should be listening to you because you elected them. But unfortunately, and this happens in Portland a lot, we're like, I didn't vote for that. They don't like me and I don't like them. I don't want to talk to them because
Yeah.
they aren't going to listen. It doesn't happen all the time, but like, right, it happens with our mayor a lot, but even with our city council members, we're like, they represent our district and that's not who I voted for. Unfortunately, the person I voted for doesn't have a voice anymore. So that's why at the beginning of this conversation, I talked about disenfranchisement. You feel like, well, what's the point? Because I did my civic duty by voting and it didn't help.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Mira. I appreciate that and share that feeling. And I think probably a number of folks on this call probably share that feeling of like it can feel like if you voted for someone and a person you really didn't want to be elected was elected and put in place, and now they're your elected officials. Like, how do you navigate those relationships? And I think it can look different for different people. I think it depends. Like at the end of the day, you need to protect your own self and your self-care, and you don't want to burn yourself out. And so you have to determine like how much can I engage on this issue, especially when I know someone does not agree with me and may never agree with me. Like you have to really try to balance how much of my energy am I willing to put into this. And maybe some days it's more and some days it's less. But like, yeah, that is a very real feeling of like sometimes the people governing us are not people we like or not people we agree with. And so what does civic engagement look like there? And I'd love to have that discussion. I think it's a really powerful one. And there's some discussion. Hopefully it's time for discussion at the end of this. So maybe we can have that then. But yeah, the Medicaid eligibility requirements is technically it's state and federal, which I know is confusing, but it kind of goes back to Mira, what you were saying. So this year we saw the federal government put eligibility requirements on Medicaid through the reconciliation bill. And then the states get to like even make that more specific. So again, that's that tiered approach that we've been talking about. Yeah, to your question. I have a little video here on how laws are made. It's 3 minutes. I know we're already at 2:40. So does this feel like something y'all want to see? Do you just want me? I'll send the slides out so you could also watch it on your own time. How's the group feeling? Is this something we want, or do we want to just see a thumbs up? Or others feeling another thumbs up? Okay, I'll play the video then. Let me I can get this to pop up. Can you all see that? Good. Okay. Can you hear it? No?
No.
All right, I think I have to press a different button. Let me stop sharing my screen, reshare, share sound. That would be helpful. And let me try again. Can you hear it
Hi,
now?
and welcome to Social Studies Shorts, where we explore a little more about
Yeah,
our
we can
state, our country, and the
Thank you.
world. Today, we're going to look at how a new idea can become a law in the United States. To understand the process, it's important to remember that the government of the U.S. is made up of 3 branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. Each branch has powers that allow them to check and balance the powers of the others. The legislative branch makes laws. That's Congress. The executive branch carries out laws. That's the president, vice president, and other major departments of government like defense. And the judicial branch evaluates or interprets laws. That's the U.S. Supreme Court and other lower courts. Citizens also play a role in checks and balances. They can always choose to not re-elect certain officials. When a member of Congress, the president, or even an ordinary citizen like you has an idea for a new law, that idea needs to first become a bill. Citizens can contact their U.S. representative or senator with concerns and ideas. If your congressperson likes your idea, they can write it down as the first draft of a bill. Your congressperson will be the sponsor of the bill and might try to get other members of Congress who strongly believe in the idea to be co-sponsors. A bill can start in the Senate or the House of Representatives. For instance, when a bill is introduced in the House, it is named and then read in front of the whole House before being sent to a committee. Committees are smaller groups of representatives who are experts on topics related to the bill, like education or security. This group researches, debates, and discusses the bill, sometimes hearing from additional experts. Committees often make changes to bills before approving them. Sometimes they can't come to an agreement or decide a bill shouldn't move on at all. Most bills, up to 90%, die in committee. But if the committee approves the bill, it is sent back to the floor of the House of Representatives, where it's debated by the full House. Representatives talk about why they agree or disagree with the bill and recommend changes before voting for or against it. When a majority approves the bill in the House, it moves on to the U.S. Senate, where it goes through similar steps. If the Senate makes changes to the bill, the House and Senate have to work out their differences before both vote once again. If it passes, the bill goes to the president to approve and sign, or not approve, also called a veto. Even if a president vetoes a bill, Congress can still override the veto with yet another vote. This time, however, the bill has to pass both the Senate and House with a 2/3 majority. This entire process usually takes a long time and can get complicated because it's rare that everyone in Congress is on the same page. But creating the nation's laws is the most important job of our legislative branch. And what's the most important part of our job? Helping you understand how government.
That's the video. I'm going to reshare my slide. Okay. So that was just like a quick run through of how laws are made, and it focused on the federal level, but it is very similar at the state level. Kind of like Mira said earlier, there's still a House and Senate, and so bills still kind of run the same way. I really wanted to hone in on the fact that bills come from ideas, including ideas from people. And that's part of the importance of civic engagement is like, yes, the lawmakers are writing and they're sponsoring legislation, but it has to come from somewhere. And it very often can come from people like you and I who raise an issue up, discuss a solution, and bring it to them and work with them to write it. They have like all the lawyers and necessary people to make it fit into the law. But what we bring is an idea and what we think is a good solution. So that's something I really wanted folks to take away from that. Then the other thing, like not when it says 90% of bills die in committee, that should just go to show like it is a slow process. It can be a frustrating process. There's a lot of ideas coming up. And we just got to keep doing our duty and advocating for what we really want to support and what we want to see move. Are there any questions about how laws are made before I move on? Okay. So all of that.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do all bills require a sponsor? So I know that some bills require sponsors before they can even be presented. Do you have to have a sponsor for all bills?
A great question. Yes, all bills need a sponsor. They don't all need a bipartisan, so like Republican and Democrat sponsor, but they need a sponsor. So one member of Congress or member of your state legislature needs to come and sponsor a bill. And so they're the one who brings it to the floor. And then they can try to get other folks to come on. But yeah, it can't go to the floor without a sponsor. A really good question, Wilma. And also why it's important for us to be like advocating and making our own elected officials the sponsors for what we want them to see. Like we can influence them to bring bills to the floor that support the issues of our community. And this is just, again, kind of back to the civic engagement is like, we are recognizing problems in the system and we want to see the solutions. And so when we make the problem known and we suggest alternatives, that's when we can help policymakers. And that's policy advocacy, it's civic engagement. It is kind of our duty and our ability to influence the country and the state and your locality. I have some resources here on like how you find your elected officials. And so this is for your federal elected officials. You'll see this new screen. Okay, so you can go to congress.gov and you'll have the link in the PowerPoint, but you can just type in your address. I'll just use my current location and it'll pop up. It'll show you. So it shows me who my 2 senators are. It shows me who my representative for the House is. And then if you click on it, well, over here, it tells you what party they are. It'll also give you their contact information, including their phone number if you wanted to call them. But if you click on their profile, you can see what legislation they've sponsored. So you can know what kind of things your lawmaker is working on. There's a lot here, but if you like are ever curious and you want to look through it, you can see all the legislation that they have sponsored. You can also look and see if they've co-sponsored any legislation and what that looks like. If you were to click on a bill, it has the bill text here. So all of that information is available online at all times. And so these are any bills brought into Congress. We can check them out. We can learn about them. They're all here. And so I just wanted to make sure folks were aware of that this is all public knowledge and we can all learn about our lawmakers. Mira, yeah.
I was just gonna add, I just learned, I mean, I should have known this, but I just learned this yesterday in this other training I was in. So just so y'all know, you can also do this on the state level. Obviously don't know y'all's websites, but if you look up basically the same thing, you can look up more localized officials and it'll show you a list of all the bills that they're currently in committee on or have supported in the past. So you can get an idea of like, you can even click on topics or search topics like homelessness or healthcare. And it'll pull up people who specifically focus on those topics. So if you wanted to get in touch with them, it's really easy to like figure out like, oh, maybe that look at these bills that they've been supporting. I'm really in favor of those, so I'd like to reach out to them. It's a cool feature that I didn't really know about.
No, thanks so much, Mira. Yeah, that's the kind of the other resource I have here is exactly that. So this one pulls you to just like a state map so you can find your state. Again, I'm in Texas, so I would click on Texas, but it brings me to my state ledge website. And down here, I can find who represents me at the state level. And then just like you're saying, you can type in words or phrases here if you wanted to type in homeless and see what comes up. And you can see all the different bills, just like Mira was saying. So that is also linked in the PowerPoint if folks want to look at that later. Kind of on that same page, you can track legislation that way. Again, there's a lot of legislation, but there is the option to, I'll show you. If you go to a piece of legislation, oh, my members. If you go to legislation, you can have it give you updates. Like you can register for updates on it. Of course, now it's not loading. But if you go to the bill, there is an option to get updates. I think because this one's old, I can't. So this is a terrible example for y'all, but I promise there is a way. There's like a little button, it's like right up here, and it says subscribe for updates. And that's a good way to stay updated on the bills that you care about. I know we have like 10 minutes, and I do want to make sure there's time for questions and discussions. So I'm going to run through the next little bit quickly, and I'm always around if y'all want to talk later. So just thinking about being an advocate, I really wanted to hone in on the fact that we all have power, our voices have power, but especially when we share an authentic story, if that feels comfortable to us, if we can share that story, that's really powerful. Also, if our information is reliable. And so we always want to be sharing reliable information with our communities, with elected officials, with our neighbors. Like we want to make sure what we're spreading is correct and accurate information. And so that's really important. When you think about like engaging, like we can get worn down if we try to engage on every single thing. Like there's so much happening. And so what we really need to focus on is like, what are we passionate about? Why do I believe in it? Why is it important to me? And where can I contribute? And so it's okay for you to say, I care about these 12 things, but I can only engage on these 2 things. Like that's the bandwidth I have in me. Like that's okay. It's okay to recognize like that's what you can contribute. You can do that really well, and you can still be really powerful, even if it's only in those 2 areas. But once you kind of identify where you're passionate about, research your issue, figure out what's true, what's not true. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So make sure, again, that you're focusing on reliable information sources and think of practical solutions. Like brainstorm with your community, with friends, with coworkers, with neighbors. Like what are some practical solutions to the problems that y'all are seeing? Actions that we can take. I listed out a few here, and I think we've talked about a lot of these. So we can share our stories. We can call or write our elected officials. So 5calls.org is a really good one. I'll bring you to it. It comes up, it knows I'm in Austin already, but like it has all these different action items you can call about. So you can say you're really concerned about SNAP funding. So like food assistance funding, because it's going to expire at the end of the month and there's not funding for it. If you click on it, it gives you a little background of everything that's going on. It tells you who to contact about this issue. And then it gives you their phone numbers and a call script, which I think is really helpful. So you can literally just call in and you can read word for word what it says here, and you don't have to stress about it. You can just literally read this. You're welcome to add in anything else, but it has a script here for you. So I wanted to make sure folks saw that. You can testify at a hearing or town hall. Like in Austin, our city council meetings, they happen once a month. Every month they have space for 10 speakers to come in and talk for 3 minutes about whatever they want to talk about. And they come up on the agenda, and it says, I think I have a link for it. Let me see. Yeah. I think this is interesting because I think sometimes we think that we can't engage on this stuff, or we have to know exactly what's going on. So at 12 o'clock, this was today actually, these 10 people signed up in advance to testify or just to talk at their city council meeting for 3 minutes. So this person wanted to talk about AI surveillance and how it harms immigrants. This person didn't know what they wanted to talk about yet. They didn't have to know. They put TBD. So they could show up today and they could talk about whatever they wanted for 3 whole minutes, and the city council had to listen to them. And then at the end of the 3 minutes, the little timer goes off and they're done. But I think it's really important to know, like, you can engage, like it is our government. They are working for us. I know it sounds cliche, but like they are. And so if you want to show up, there's typically rules. You have to register like more than 24 hours in advance. It's like a window. So you have to figure out what the rules are for your local government. But sometimes you can do it online. Sometimes you can just submit written stuff. So there's a lot of options here, but we do have power to engage on things. And so I think really wanted to lean into that. I know we're like running so low on time, so there are elections in 2025. There's a calendar here. Find out if there's election in your state. Make sure you vote on November 4th if there is. I know Texas has some elections. California, New Jersey has a governor, Virginia has a governor election going on right now. So figure out where that's happening and make sure you show up, you vote. Amy, or I think it's Kendall. Do you have a question?
No, I didn't have
Okay.
I didn't have a question. I was going to put in local elections are coming up even for the mayor here in Atlanta. So
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to make sure you know that that's coming up because it's not a presidential election, so it doesn't get talked about as much. So you got to know when that's coming up. Find protests. I have information, like I kind of broke down all those action steps. So those are here in the slides. The last thing I'll say is like, we've touched on it in this call, but ups and downs are normal. Sometimes it feels like we're not making any progress. Everything sucks. Like no one's listening to us. No one is advocating for us. No one's standing up for us. And that is really, really tough. And I share that feeling. But we have to just remember we have community, remember why we're advocating, remember why we're doing this, have to continue to believe that things can change, that there are good people out there. If you need help or support in your community, ask for it. Ask your NCAB folks, ask the council staff, ask your community members, ask your neighbors, ask for that help because we are in community. And then most importantly, practice your self-care. Like it is tough times. Like we are navigating really tough waters right now, and it's okay to take a step back, need a minute, like do what you need to do, go on a walk, play with your dog, read a book, like take that time for self-care because you can't be a good advocate if you're drained. My like favorite saying is you can't pour from an empty glass. So you got to make sure your own cup is filled up first before you can help anyone else. And that's I ran through the last bit of it, but that's kind of the civic engagement 101. I know we only have a few minutes, but are there any questions or things folks want to talk about?
So I just want to make a comment, Lauren. I really appreciate this because this is very important because right now we're in a stage where we've got newcomers, new homeless people, new people who are paying attention to Medicaid, and I think their levels of engagement I think the last 6 slides should be a standard of, distributive how you contact your local officials, state, local, and federal officials. So I really appreciate it because again, we have to start re-educating and educating some people who are just getting into the field of advocacy, not only for an organization, but personal advocacy. And they know where they need to know where to go. And I think that this was very important. Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, Kendall. Yeah, I appreciate that. And we're all at different journeys in our like civic engagement advocacy journey. We all always have more to learn. And so happy to do a refresher or answer any questions. You can always email me, email Meredith. Happy to like talk through options and help you think through it. Or if you write testimony and you want us to read it, we're happy to do. Like I am very happy. Email it to me. I will help you edit it. I will sit on Zoom with you while you practice it if that's what would make you feel comfortable. Like I'm happy to be the resource. Wilma?
Yeah, I was just gonna say in agreement with what Warren just said, and now is an even more critical time to pay attention to those local races, those races for mayor and city council and all
You
of
mean
those things.
Kendall?
I'm sorry, Kendall. My apologies, sir. But
No, it's actually Amy. It's Amy.
it's a more critical time now than ever to pay attention to who we're voting for on the local level and making sure those folks are in line with, what we want to see as individuals in our own communities. Because those are the people that are representing us in Washington, DC. So we need to really keen in on that. Everybody always thinks that it's a presidential race that's more important, but really it's your local races that matter the most.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks, Wilma. And I know we're at time, so thank you all for listening to me. And like I said, I'm here as a resource, and Meredith, I'll pass it back to you.
Wonderful. Truly, Laura, thank you so much. I don't know if you've been able to look at the chat, but lots of shout outs going out to you. And just thanks so much for all the really helpful information and education. So just want to remind folks that our November meeting, we've typically been meeting the 4th Thursday of the month, but our November meeting will be the 3rd Thursday. So it'll be Thursday, November 13th, and it'll be from 1 to 2 Central. So I'll be sending out a meeting reminder with the agenda, but just wanted to give you all a heads up about that. Also, just
Meredith?
wanted to quickly say,
Sorry to interrupt you. It's the second Thursday. It's the
oh,
13th,
thank you.
but I just, sorry, just making sure.
Thank you. And then also wanted to say, if there were folks that were joining the NCAB membership meeting for the first time this month, really want to welcome you. I know our check-in time was quick this month, but hope that you can come back in November and that we continue to have the time to get to know one another. And yeah, I encourage you to bring a friend in November. See if there's someone in your community you'd like to invite to this meeting. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Laura.
Bye.
We'll see you
Thanks,
next
everybody.
time.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bring a friend.